Pleasure to be back. Tremendous chus. B'shus, my father, thank you for coming. And all the Hilig Yidden that we met before in the past, nice to see you. Anyone who's new, my name is Don Jarosho, and excited to hopefully share some words of chizik from the Parsha. So last time I came, I thought it was interesting. Literally right before I went to the Ribnitzer to daven. And,
Credit card.
Wow. A serious fan over here, the credit card story. It means a lot. I mean, listen, you remember. Good.
The scammers never stop.
I appreciate it. Credit card, very good. So it's interesting that I actually didn't have anything in store, anything interesting that happened. But right before I came here tonight, a few minutes ago, I was at a chasna at the atrium. And you always got to have the antennas on. What people are saying, looking around, drawing chizik from day-to-day life. So we pull up at the chasna, and of course there's Bachrim. And a bunch of Bachrim jump into a car and say, Chaim, let's go. Chaim says, where are we going? He says, we're going to the Ribnitzer. So I said, let me start listening. It's not the Ribnitzer Maisa. He said, Chaim, let's go. The Ribnitzer says, Pali Shuis, hop in the car. He said, okay, let's go. So either we can just gloss over those things and say, okay, nice, cute. Or we can draw something, take something from there that it's not a mistake that the Ribnitzer is Pali Shuis. But there's something much greater, much more powerful that created the Ribnitzer, that enabled the Ribnitzer to be part of those Yeshuas. His name is the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And I don't know what to say other than you look at the news these days and it's a very sad, eerie, dark place to be. World news is going on in Israel. Unfortunately, there's fallen soldiers came out every day. What's going on in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. And especially, there was this big... Yes? And lastly, there was unfortunately a tremendous tragedy that happened here in Monsey, Pomona. There's something there was a curry that went around about the bikes recently, without getting into any details, but it's something that we all have to learn from and see what we can take out of these awful besuras, these awful tragic occurrences. I wasn't sure where to start because there's really a lot to say.
Low battery.
You hit low power mode? Thanks. Or close? Either one.
It says close.
Close, perfect. Thank you. But I'm going to start with where I was today. So I was at the Ribnitzer, I was at the Chasna, I heard that. But I'm just going to share an experience because I'm just going where the heart takes me right now. So I went to Menachem Abba with my mother today in Pomona. I came from Monsey, from Lakewood. And my mother said, did you hear what happened? I said, yes, heart-wrenching, awful, but... And she said, you know to live right here. I'm like, you know what, Ma, let's just hop in the car and go. And we went, and it was awful and heart-wrenching, and there's no words to describe the pain of these parents and avelos, young, fresh parents, Baruch Hashem with other children, but just buried their child 24 hours before. And the father was sitting there, and the mother, and the father opened up after everyone said their, the Hamakim Menachem, and he just said, listen up. He said, of course we're shooken. Of course we have no words, and we can't make heads or tails out of this. And he added, we can't understand why the situation, why the tragedy had to have taken place in such a tragic way. And he said, I don't understand. My wife doesn't understand. He said, why couldn't Hashem be geyser on this 8-year-old girl that she should have gotten sick? Would have been slow, unexpected, but instead it had to be literally from one second to the next. Why did it have to be in such a tragic, drastic way? And what he said was, I don't know. I don't have answers. I'm shooken. And anyone who hears about this, who's also shooken, should just take the following message. This is him, it's not me. He said, just realize that we don't have the answers. Realize that we're here in a transient world. And we know there's a bigger picture. We know there's the Das Hashem Elyon. We know that somehow or another, Koman David Rachman Alatav Avid. And ultimately we're meant to somehow find the strength, find the silver lining, even in the darkest places in life, and attach ourselves to those, and slowly crawl out and become greater, elevated, and do more mitzvahs, and be more kavod shemaim. I was quite taken aback how it's possible. It's unfathomable that a person in such a situation, sitting fresh, with the most horrific gashes right into his everything, emotionally, physically, mentally, him and his wife, how he can utter these words. But we all know that's the truth. We all know that, yes, the Rebbe says Payishuis, but we all know that somehow or another we all come back right into the Eibishter. And with all of our sveikus and all of our problems, all of our uncertainties and challenges, and thousands of excuses and reasons why we can't, and why we're too low and we're too beaten, too bruised and banged up, we all know deep down in our heart that there's one address. And we know that that one address has all the answers and all the light and clarity resides over there. And even when it's so painful, and even when we don't have those answers, we go running back to Tati, we go running back to the Melech. What does that have to do with this parsha? I wasn't sure, because I already had my shtickle prepared for this. But after I heard this from him, I knew exactly where exactly it manifests. It's quite mind-boggling how Hashem sometimes orchestrates these things. You have a shtickle and it's about one thing, and then this thing happens, and all the beauty of Torah is that everything comes together. Everything really conglomerates. And there's never a stira, because when you're chasing the emes, when you're pursuing the emes, it's never hard to make two things that seem not to have a shaykhis, to make them jive, to make them shtim. So I was just telling you about a grieving parent in New City, parents in New City. And then we always come back to the Eibishter. And this week talks about Beha'aloscha, beautiful things, the Klei Mishkan, Misleinin, MKB, Misleinin, we can have a shaykhis, the complainers. Shouldn't be complainers, of course. What does that do with Mizbech, the opening parsha, the opening parak? Opening pasuk. Though the menorah should be meir, it should be a light. And who constructed the menorah? Who was it? It was Betzalel. Betzalel ben Uri ben Chur. So there's an astounding medrash. The medrash tells us that it wasn't so simple that Betzalel should have been the one constructing the menorah. What happened? It says the medrash, Vasisa menorah zav tar. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, make a menorah zav tar. But Moshe said, Amalei, miksha tasa menorah.
What is it?
Huh?
He didn't know what it was.
Exactly. He didn't know what it was. He forgot. Hashem gave him instructions, and the medrash goes through a lengthy back and forth with Moshe Rabbeinu Kadosh Baruch Hu. And then at the end, Hischil Tama v'Amar Kama Pamim Haru LeKadosh Baruch Hu v'niskashti lasoisa. Moshe Rabbeinu was bewildered at himself. He didn't understand. He said, "I'm the greatest." He didn't say this, but he was saying, "I'm the greatest person. I'm the Manog of Klal Yisrael." How many times does the Eibush have to tell me the same thing over and over? Miksha should be banged out. Should be zav. All the instructions are very clear. And why am I having this? What's the obstacle over here? What's stopping me? You can't do it? You can't figure it out? Go to Betzal. And somehow, which needs an explanation, Betzal, snap of a finger, no questions asked. He didn't need to regain clarity. He didn't need a back and forth. Miyad asa, tells us the Medrash. Hiskil Tama v'Amar. The Moshe Rabbeinu again was upset himself. He said, I can't believe this. I'm trying so hard. I heard the instructions over and over. I met the Shechina itself. You, Betzal, you never did. How does it make sense? And the Medrash says, Betzal kel ha'isi oimed k'shehar l'kadosh baruch hu asiso lefikach k'shechar beis hamikdash nignez ha'menera. Says the Medrash concludes that there was a special element, a special thing that Moshe Rabbeinu, even he was zeicha to, and that was the Betzal of Kel, the divine shade, which is the name of Betzal in the shade of Kel, of God. And through that closeness, through that experience that only Betzal was zeicha to, that Moshe Rabbeinu was not, he was zeicha to build the Mishkan. Okay? As I state in, he was zeicha to build the menorah. So it sounds straightforward. Understand? Okay. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't do it. He had all his questions. He was upset. He was frustrated. But Betzal had this extra siyata d'shmaya, this extra revelation, and he was able to go ahead and build the menorah. The guy Rabbi, the Imre Emes, asks the kasha. He says, I don't understand. He says, L'maisa. It's a beautiful medrash. Tells us the back and forth between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Betzal and Moshe. But he said, at the end of the day, Moshe Rabbeinu was like, Kambi Sa'al K'Moshe Oid. So as much as the Medrash is justifying and explaining how it's possible Moshe Rabbeinu did it and Betzal, how Betzal did do it, Moshe didn't. He said, I still struggle, says the Imre Emes, to understand the Maisa. What happened? What was Moshe Rabbeinu missing? What's the pshat in this whole back and forth?
There were three things he didn't know.
The Gemara, right? Exactly, right. Each one, then right over there, he went to he was the tafas on the kisei hakavod, right? That's Purim Torah. Very good. So this kasha, we have the Medrash, we have a kasha from the Imre Emes, and the Imre Emes says it's brought down in a sefer. It says for 40 years he didn't understand, he didn't have a clear understanding of this Medrash until he received the answer in a very unexpected way. What happened? Listen to this Maisa. Says the Imre Emes. He went to Warsaw to visit his son-in-law who went through a surgery. And there was a complication and something really went wrong. And the Imre Emes spoke to the doctor trying to figure out what's going to be, and the doctor felt an achrayus responsibility to explain why it went wrong. He felt, it was someone's life in his hands, and he didn't do as expected. So the surgeon said, let me explain to Imre Emes what's going on and why I couldn't perform peak performance. He started with a story. He said, once upon a time, there was a king and a princess, and they had this beautiful gem. But the stone, this gem, had one issue, one flaw with it. It was discolored. And they came to the leading experts in the kingdom, and they came to them, and they all said that the stain can indeed be removed. Problem is that everyone, all the misharsim, all the servants, no one was willing to perform the task of removing this discoloration from the gem. And what happened? With no choice, they found some off-market cutter who was able to scrape off very, very carefully, with precision, and they removed the discoloration from the gem. That was the first Maisa. that the doctor told the Imre Emes. And then he said, I want to tell you one more thing, Imre Emes. There's a story with Napoleon, whose wife was experiencing tremendous difficulty with childbirth. And the leading midwives in Paris, they all came and tried to see what they can do, but they were all scared because this is Napoleon's wife. And the empress, she said, you know what, with no other choice, we're just going to have to go to some peasant midwife. They called her in from the countryside, and miraculously, they were able to safely deliver the royal newborn. Said the doctor to the Imre Emes, the same thing is in your case. He said it was a routine operation. It wasn't a huge deal that I was supposed to do with your son-in-law. And typically, I can perform it with ease. But this time, when I saw who the patient was, understanding his lineage, understanding the Kedusha, even though he was a guy, and seeing the holy person that he was about to operate on, he said, I became very apprehensive and self-conscious, and I couldn't perform the way I normally perform. Zok the Imre Emes, you want to know what's pshat in this medrash? He said after 40 years of not having an answer, he said after speaking to this doctor, he said, then I understand. He said, then I thought of this medrash that bothered me, that baffled me for so long. He said, of course, Moshe Rabbeinu could have built the menorah. But Moshe Rabbeinu was like, Kam Bisal Kam Moshe. There was no one like him. He was the holiest. He was the greatest ever. And because of his profound hakara, recognition, realizing the deep significance of the menorah, what it represents, not just on a physical level, but even on a metaphysical level, all the deep inyanim of the menorah, he was pashut intimidated. Intimidated by the Kedusha, by the magnitude of the task that was placed before him. And because of this fear, because of how much he knew, because of how acutely aware he was of the Kedusha of the menorah, that prevented him from doing something he would have otherwise accomplished with ease. Bitzalel, says the Imre Emes, on the other hand, he was like the commoner. Not chas shalom to compare him, but he was a regular person in comparison to Moshe Rabbeinu. He did not have that same level of depth, of understanding of what the menorah was. His view of the task of building a menorah was very one-dimensional. And for that reason, it caused him less anxiety, it wasn't as daunting, and he was a better, more suitable candidate to build the menorah even than Moshe Rabbeinu.
Saying Moshe Rabbeinu was too holy.
He knew too much, he understood too much. His recognition of the Kedusha, understanding Hashem, and this mandate of building a menorah that represented Ya'iru Shavas Aniris, all of this frightened him, just like the king with the gem that the doctor was so afraid to operate on to cleanse it out because he knew if he would mess up, he'd be done. He understood what it meant, majesty. He understood melucha. And just like the baby that wasn't able to be delivered for the princess. Why? Because they were afraid. They knew what it means, melucha, what it means to be a malka, what it means, majesty, what it means the continuity of the majesty. The doctors couldn't do it, and they had to get a regular commoner from the countryside in order to deliver the baby. So says the Imre Emes, that's exactly the same thing with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu knew too much, he was too holy, and that stood as an obstruction. It was an obstacle that ultimately stopped him from being a candidate. They stood the right candidate for building the menorah, and that's why it had to be put onto Bitzalel. And that's what it means in the Medrash. Moshe Rabbeinu was Tama alav. He was bewildered at himself. He was so upset, he was frustrated. He said, how could it be? I know so much. I appreciate Yiddishkeit so much. I spoke Peh Peh Melakim. I was the manig of Klal Yisrael for all these years. I know everything. I know what they need. But Tama alav. It was so frustrating because he wanted to do it so badly, but at the same time, there was no one who knew better than him what the menorah represented, and because of that, he couldn't do it, and it had to be deferred to Betzalel. So Rabbi say, what is this medrash? What is this pshat for the emes? Which I think is a beautiful, marvelous pshat, understanding the medrash, what went on, Moshe Rabbeinu's frustration, and why Betzalel ultimately was able to pull through and build the menorah. What does that have to do with us? I think the answer is very simple. The answer is that sometimes when we know too much, sometimes when we possess too much clarity, sometimes when we seek, we want to know the answers to everything, and we can't live with the questions, we can't live with the sveikus. Sometimes that's the biggest obstacle. And when we learn from Moshe Rabbeinu and Betzalel, the midah that Betzalel possessed, that I believe we have to learn from everything in the Torah. We have to learn how we are mishtayach to the mizbeach, how we mishtayach to the menorah, how we can find the midah of Moshe Rabbeinu. But most importantly, in this week's parsha, where do we tap into? Where are we taking the midah of Betzalel and plugging it, inculcating it into our lives? And what Betzalel is teaching us, what we're learning from this medrash, is that sometimes less is more. Sometimes not understanding. Sometimes not having the deepest appreciation for something. Sometimes not knowing the dasa, the Kima Elyon, which we'll never know, but sometimes we strive. We want to have answers for everything. That will be our greatest opponent, our greatest obstacle that will stop us in our avodah.
Just trust. Haidu Hashem Kitayv.
Haidu Hashem Kitayv. And I think going back to, there's so much going on in the world. And there's so many sveikus. And there's so many people wondering that have questions. But the answer is, sometimes we have to remind ourselves, Betzalel. We have to look at the menorah. The menorah was, what was it? Ya'iru Shivas Aneros. We have to look at the beautiful illuminating lights of the menorah, and not just be illuminated and affected and be moved by the illumination of the lights, but the actual building of the menorah. How it was set in motion, how it was constructed, and it was this whole back conversation, this whole with Moshe Rabbeinu and Betzalel, and we realized that Betzalel was only because of him that he settled for less, that he was okay, that he was a little bit restricted, that he didn't have access to everything, and that's what gave him the ability to build the menorah and to help us keep on shining and remember we're always to come back to. I saw this unbelievable line that I think is really just so important, ties right into this. It's a line from Werner Heisenberg. Have you heard of him? Unbelievable. One of the Heisenberg principle. I don't know if this is it, but Werner Heisenberg says like this. He says, the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist. But at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. What that means, I'll say it again. The first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist. But at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. What does that mean? You like it?
It's all God in the end.
That when a person first begins studying science, many things that were mysterious become explainable. He understands how to make an atom bomb. He understands how to blow up the world. He understands revolution. He understands how everything happened. But then, what happens, unfortunately, is that when a person goes deeper into the science, they encounter increasingly fundamental questions. Why do the laws of nature exist? Why is the universe ordered in a way that can be understood? Why do mathematics describe reality so effectively? Why everything? Why? There's no answers. Why is there something rather than nothing? When you get to the bottom of the glass, we realize that God is waiting at the bottom. And no matter what life throws us, when sometimes we want to understand everything, we want to understand all the scientific gases, we want to understand how everything works. Yeah, sometimes it can be comforting, we can have luchas and nefesh, but sometimes too much, we're just going to bump into a wall with no answers and realize there's only an Eibishter. I bumped into a guy this week, and I think this really encapsulates it all, and it's a person that's not just saying it, not just thinking it, but he's actually wearing it on his shirt. A guy in Lakewood walked into his office this week, had a talk with him, and I see on his shirt it says error. And I'm wondering, like, why, what's up with the shirt? Why are you saying error? Like, it's a very off-putting thing. Like, when you encounter people, this is error. Like, did I make a mistake by looking at you? It was a t-shirt. It said error. And I'm like, is this your brand? He's like, listen. He said, this isn't my only shirt. He said, I custom make all my shirts. It says error over here, error on the back. Everything is one big error. And he said, what's the pshat? He said, because I always want to be reminded, and I always want people to be reminded that the second you start thinking, the second you start making cheshbonos, the second you start seeking all the clarity and all the answers, it's one big error. Be happy with what you understand. It's hard, it's difficult, and life can be very challenging at times. But the second you start thinking too much, it's an error. Stop. Think about the Eibishter. Think that we don't have all the answers. Think that Betzalel, the only reason he merited making the menorah was only because he was limited. And sometimes limitations are the key to success. At another unbelievable line. Be a tam. Be happy. Something simple. Understanding. Nuchas hanefesh. I met a guy today who had every reason to give up on life. Every reason to be sad. Every reason to be depressed. And by the way, this wasn't the guy who was sitting Shiva. It's not a funny thing, but I came out and there was this other guy who, I don't want to go through all this source. I was just being a listening ear as an old friend I haven't seen in a long time. And I'm like, how you doing? And he says, I'm doing great, with a big smile. He said, wow, I'm so happy to hear that. Like, what do you do? Like, I do nothing. I'm like, what do you do? Like, I'm being 100% honest with you. I do nothing. I said, you used to have like a restaurant. He's like, yeah, I used to have a bunch of restaurants. I used to do a lot of things, and now I do nothing. I said, does your wife work? Like, my wife does nothing. So I said, can you explain? So I'll tell you. He said, I tried everything. Everything failed. He said, the only thing I have left is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And now I have everything. He said he's taking his 9-month-old baby tomorrow. Today is Thursday, Friday morning. You know he's going with his baby? To be tested for cancer. And this is a person who's telling me he has everything. And he said it when he got the call from the doctor that they're afraid that his 9-month-old baby, who has terrible, terrible genetic diseases, and they called him and said, we think your baby has cancer. You know what he said? You know what his reaction was? He laughed. He couldn't stop laughing. Because he knew that nothing, it's all the Eibishter. And nothing can affect him. And this is a regular guy. I promise you. Regular guy who right out of the street. With a real story. With a real package. And real bitachon. There's a quote that goes as follows, just to wrap it up, that I think will really capture everything. Something we should never forget. The quote goes as follows.
The clock is broken, I'm just letting you know.
Okay, we've done it.
No, it's broken. That is...
Oh, it's working. Looks like it's fine.
Lizman.
Oh, Lizman. Oh, so okay, I have a lot to... Let me tell you this. This is unbelievable gedank. Okay? Just close your eyes for a second and put your mind, think about it for a moment. Really tough day. Parnasa is not great. Didn't close the right deal. Someone ticked you off. Someone ignored you. Something happened with Shalom Bayis, your kid, a doctor. Rough day. But says the quote. During those times, close your eyes and recognize that there are thousands of people that pray every single day to be going through and have the exact package that you have and that you're going through. Let that sink in. Just when you think you can't handle it anymore, close your eyes, as Michael Safdie talks about all the time. More haidah, more thanks. The second you think it's not working, the second you think you're broken, Shar B'tachon, shries this all day. You're all bruised and banged up, his signature words. Stop complaining. Start looking at the Eibishter without all the answers, without asking why, who, where, when, and just look at everything. Look at your fingers, look at your eyes, look at your feet, look at where you are. If you have children, if you have a wife, all the toiv, and realize that Hashem can flip anything around. That there's no shortage. I was talking to another guy the other day, yesterday. I said, how are you? What's going on? I said, Baruch Hashem. I said, can I talk to you about business for a second? He says, yeah. He says, I just want to let you know. He says, if you know how I can get $25 million, that would be a huge help. But he said, otherwise I'm happy to talk. I said, okay. So can I just ask you, how are you? He wasn't kidding. He'll see this and I'm going to show it to him and he can verify it. Guy lives in Muncie. And just the bitachon of some people, we all go through these things, but it's just inspiring and we always need to be reminded that there are regular people that go through the same things. And I just said, listen, Rabbi, the $25 million is not a big deal. It's not worth your pinky. It's not worth your eye. It's not worth neshima. Not worth one breath. And if Hashem is sustaining you and giving you all the good, your wife and your kids, and everything until now, as the Chavez Vavos talks about all the time, yeah, 25 million sounds like a lot, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ein Sof. And when we realize and we believe the Ein Sof, we realize that Hashem is not capped, then we'll be able,
It becomes a reality.
it becomes a reality, and we'll be able not just to accept, but to embrace the fact that whatever it is that we're going through, we don't have the answers. That whatever we're going through, yes, it's a challenge, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is holding me. He's got me. He's my biggest fan. He's rooting for me. He wants my best. Like an only child, as Rav Shimshon Pincus always talks about. Like an only child. Ben Yachid, Bas Yachid. We keep this all in mind, especially as we hear what's going on in this crazy world, sad world. And we're here trying to do our best and learn later on a Thursday night and be mechazik ourselves and come back to our wives and kids and pump them with chizik. We remember, we come back to the timeless wisdom of the Torah. Just read these words again. Moshe Rabbeinu had the same question. He said, I know everything. I don't understand why I can't make the menorah. I don't understand why it's hard for me to do it if I'm the greatest person. And I know everything. You, B'tzal, you don't know nearly as much as me. But you were on a lower level, not pel, but you were B'tzel kel. And because of that limitation, that was the impetus. That was how you were zeiche, to conquer, to achieve, and to build a menorah. And for us, we're all here to build menorahs for ourselves, for our wives, our children, our families. We're all on a mission, and we all are able to be mishtaich to the midah of B'tzalel. And when we do so and say, Eibishter, I know you're everything, I know you're the Kol Yachol, I know you can turn anything around, and I know I'm not going to have all the answers, and I know it's shver. And thinking about that child, Nebuch in Pomona, and a father is able to say 2 days after, whoever shooken, just take it and run and do something better, do something more, be mar b'kavei shemayim. That's B'tzal. That's saying I don't understand, but I'm okay. That's saying I'm limited, but I'm still going for strength. I'm not going to grumble. May these words be a chizik. It's a chizik for me. And it should be a zechus for this young girl whose name is Shendel Bas Reb Chaim Yehuda Leib. May her neshama be Imei Zeisher for all of us. May she have an aliyah. And may we ultimately be zeicha before we go into Chodesh Tammuz, which is Shechar Beis HaMikdash. We should only be zeicha of Binin Beis HaMikdash. We shouldn't think about the 3 weeks. We shouldn't have Shavasa or none of that. We should say Beis HaMikdash soon because we can't handle it anymore. And even though we're there, we know that Eibusha is going to take care of us. We should all dance together with the arrival of Shir Tzidkenu B'mir V'minu Amen. That's it. Unbelievable, no?